welcome to the May edition of HR Hot Topics. I'm your host, Jodi Schafer, and we're going to make this the most informative 10 minutes of your month. This month, I'm going to talk about something that is probably one of the most difficult things any leader has to do, and that is separate an employee from your place of business. And this is hard for a number of reasons. One, there's an emotional component here. You have to sit across the table and look someone in the eye or be on the phone or a video call with them and tell them that they no longer have a job with your organization. And even if this is someone that you've been working with for a while now to either improve performance or to rectify some behavioral issues, it is still not easy to sit across from somebody and tell them that it's over, and you don't know how they're going to respond. So there's a fear component to this as well. And then there's this risk assessment that also ties in, because terminations can be one of the most risky things that a leader does in the course of their daily work. Risky in terms of potential legal pitfalls. And so I want to walk through some best practices today, some things to keep in mind to make this process as painless as possible. It's not going to be pain-free. You should have some butterflies in your stomach before you sit down and do this kind of thing. That's what reminds you that you are a human being. So it should never be easy, but it doesn't necessarily have to be painful. So where I like to start, when I get a call from a client and they're at a point where they feel like it's time to separate from an employee, one of the first questions I'm asking them is, what is your employment status? Are you an at-will employer, or are you a just cause employer? At-will means you can let an employee go at any time for any reason, with or without notice, and the employee maintains a similar right. They could leave your position at any time with or without notice. Versus just cause, which means you have to have a just cause for letting the employee go, which requires oftentimes a certain amount of documentation. The employee reason for separation has to fall in certain categories or buckets. This is often entered into through a collective bargaining agreement or a contract. So you have to know your status, because you have to know if there are specific steps or processes that you had to have gone through before you get to the point of separation. If you're at will, there's no such standard. However, at will does not protect you from illegal reasons for separation. So even though an at will status sounds, like a great status to have, it's not a good management philosophy. You still ideally have had some lead-up conversations with this employee. You've pointed out whatever the potential issues are. You've given an opportunity for correction or improvement, and you've now reached the conclusion of that time frame, and you haven't seen, the sort of improvement you need, and so you're ready to make this decision around employment. And hopefully you'd have some documentation to support that up. So those are, that's the first question I'm asking, what's your employment status? The second question I'm trying to figure out is, what is the reason that you're letting this employee go? Is it something that they did or failed to do? Is it performance-based? Have you given them adequate time to learn a specific responsibility within their job category, and they're just not able to do it, or they can't do it consistently, they can't do it to the level that you need them to do it, or they're simply not quick enough? Or is it behavioral? They are behaving in a way that is counter to your organization's values or culture. It sort of flies in the face of collaboration or teamwork or transparency, whatever values you hold dear. If this individual is running counter to that, it causes a lot of disruption amongst the team, and you could be losing other employees as a result of keeping this person on staff. So, is it performance-based? Is it behavior-based? Or there's this third category too, which is really kind of a no-cause category. This is where perhaps there's going to be a reduction in force. Your financial situation is such that you can no longer support the number of employees you currently have on payroll, and you have to make cuts. And it's not that this person did anything wrong, you just simply can't afford to keep them anymore. Or they were working in a service line or for a client that you no longer have a contract with, and so therefore the work no longer exists. Those types of conversations are also incredibly difficult. But I'm always trying to figure out, what's the rationale that has led up to this? Do we feel like we've given this employee adequate time to make improvements if there was a cause associated with it? Or if it's a reduction in force, how did we determine which positions are going to be affected by this reduction? And making sure that in either case, we go through a risk assessment. Are we at risk for a discrimination claim? Are we at risk for a retaliation claim? Are we at risk for a wrongful discharge claim? And so going through that sort of analysis, I think, is really important. And this is where I would encourage you, depending on your level within leadership, if you have an HR department within your organization, that's a good place to go and kind of run this position. You want to run it through upper management. You want to run it through HR. If you don't have HR on staff, and this is where we often get the calls, you can certainly reach out to an HR expert like HRM Services, and we can help you do that risk assessment. And then some folks will reach out to their attorney as well. So lots of options there. But as I said, this is a really risky decision that you're making. You want to make sure you go into it with your eyes wide open. And so it is important to get feedback from someone other than yourself to make sure you've thought about this from all angles. Other things to think about before you actually sit down and have the conversation with the employee is, are you going to be offering anything to them to help ease the transition? And what I mean by this is, are you going to be offering pay in lieu of notice, for example? Oftentimes when you decide that somebody is no longer the right fit for your team, you don't want them continuing to stay on the team any longer than the moment you're having that conversation. Because then there's a risk involved, right? Now they know that they're not going to have a job with you any longer. If they continue to work for you for another week or two, could they do more damage? They have access to your confidential information. They have access to your systems and your clients or your members. Do you really want somebody sitting on your team knowing that in a week or two their job is ending? That's a decision you have to weigh. Most employers, when they weigh that risk, they say, no, I kind of want to make this effective immediately, but boy, I feel bad because maybe the employee is going to feel like this came out of left field. They didn't know today was the last day they were going to get a paycheck. And so some employers will offer pay in lieu of notice. So even though the effective date of your termination might be today when we have the conversation, I'm going to agree to pay you for a certain period of time, the rest of this week, 2 weeks, that kind of thing, even though you're no longer working for me anymore, just to give you a bit of a financial cushion to sort of find the next opportunity, to get yourself set up with unemployment perhaps, that kind of thing. More formal agreements around that pay piece come in the form of a severance agreement. This is another consideration you can have, and this is again where that risk assessment comes into play. If there is a risk that this person could come back and bring a suit against you, maybe you don't have adequate documentation in place. Maybe this person's just coming off of a medical leave, and even though you're not required to hold the job if you have less than 50 employees, you're worried about the optics of this. And so it's the situation where you're like, don't go away mad, just go away. And so one of the ways that I help ease some of the stress and frustration on the part of the separating employee is maybe I offer a severance agreement. Again, it's a legal document that says, I'm going to give you something of financial value that you're not otherwise entitled to. And in exchange for that, you're going to sign a release of claims that says, you're not going to bring a lawsuit against me. Oftentimes, the thing that you're offering that has financial value is wages. So you might say, I'm going to pay you for an additional 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 months, right, of wages. Maybe I'm going to carry your insurance benefits through that period of time as well. Maybe I'm going to pay out a sick bank or a vacation bank that you wouldn't otherwise be entitled to. It can be any number of things. I'm going to give you all of this as an incentive to sign off on a release of claims for me. And often the severance agreements will also include a non-solicitation clause. So this exiting employee can't try to solicit additional employees still on staff with you to follow them to the next employer. They can't solicit your clients, your members, as they go to this next employer. A non-disparagement clause, which says you won't speak badly about us and we won't speak badly about you. So those agreements can contain a lot of different components, but they are legal documents. So this is something that an attorney would help you draft. It's voluntary whether the person signs it or not. So you want to make it, generous enough that you get that release of claims if you're worried about it. And often in times of reductions in force where it's really no fault of the employee at all, it's a financial decision, often severance agreements will be part of that package just to help transition. Another thing to keep in mind are outplacement services, whether or not that's something you want to offer. This is where the employer is paying for a certain number of hours for the exiting employee to work with like a job coach to help with updating their resume, maybe helping with some interviewing skills, maybe taking a look at that cover letter or helping them determine how best to land the next position. We offer outplacement services here at HRM Services, and so do other organizations. So it's just another thing that you can do to try to ease the transition. These are all decisions that you want to be thinking about before you sit down and have the conversation with the employee, so that at the time of the conversation, when you bring them in, you've got kind of this drafted list of talking points that you can go through with that employee. Now, in those meetings, you want to do it in the most personal communication method that you have available to you. So if the person's working in an in-person job, generally these are in-person meetings. If it's a hybrid environment, oftentimes you'll wait till the person's back in the office so you can do it face-to-face. If they're fully remote, or you're fearful of like a safety concern or an extreme reaction, you can do it virtually. It could be a video call. It could be a phone call. In extreme circumstances, if somebody was put on leave, for example, because you were doing a workplace investigation and you decide to term them based on the results of the investigation, you don't have to call them back into the office to do that. You could just send a letter. So lots of ways that you can communicate it, but the general rule of thumb is you want to do it in the most personal way possible. And you always want to have somebody else either in the room or on the call with you to serve as a witness. And everyone needs to be clear about who's saying what. And you want to do a little bit of role playing beforehand so that you can prep for all different emotional responses. Anger, confusion, right? Pushing back and wanting a lot of details. So you sort of want to know, like, how much information am I willing to share in the meeting, and at what point would I sort of wrap that up and then move forward with the stuff I need to collect. And that's the final thing I'll just leave you with here is what you need to get at that meeting. And we've put together a separation checklist that we use a lot of times that sort of walks you through that, because it's a highly emotional meeting. And so your memory is terrible in those moments, right? So that's why having things written down is helpful. But do you need to collect passwords and keys, equipment, right? Uniforms, any of that kind of stuff. And then what's the plan on the IT side in terms of security? So do they know when you're going to have this meeting? Do they know when they should shut off access to certain things? So it's got to be well orchestrated, which is why you never want to do this spontaneously. You always want to take your time, think through it, make sure that you get consultation from another set of eyes and ears, let them weigh in on risks, go through what your package might be if you're going to offer anything at all. Think through your talking points, how you're going to frame it, who's going to be in the room or on the call with you, and then what you need to get back as a result of that meeting. So just kind of a lot of information there, but this is an area we get a lot of calls on, and so I thought it would be good to do a video around this. I'm going to include that separation checklist down below, so make sure if you're on our email list, you check out those links down below. If you're watching this on YouTube and you're not part of our email list, please join. Will's going to put a QR code up here so that you can easily do that, but we'll have that separation checklist. I'm also going to link to our outplacement services. Again, if you as the employer, especially for a reduction in force, for example, where you just feel terrible about this and you want to give this person a kind of a transition and a runway so that they can successfully find their next role, maybe paying for a couple hours of coaching, job coaching for that person is a really nice offering. Maybe you want to build it into your severance. So I'll put some information on that. And then a reminder, we have a training coming up next month. So on June 4th, we have an all-day training in Okemos, starts at 9 a.m. And it's all the prep work that would get you ready for a termination conversation if you had to have it. So it's all around issue spotting. So when employees aren't meeting expectations, either performance, behavior, or both, how do you do that diagnosis? How do you respond in each one of those cases? We talk a lot about documentation, and then we actually practice the how to say hard things part of this, which would include a termination conversation. So as I said, one of the most difficult things that a leader will have to do, and it's something that practice, it doesn't make perfect, but it makes it a lot less painful. And so we're creating an opportunity to get some of that real world practice at this training. So if that's something you or your team could benefit from, spaces are filling up quickly. They always do with our in-person trainings. We only have a handful left, but I'm going to have a link here for that as well, and that's June 4th. So with that, I think I've covered all of the pieces for today. I will leave you, and we will pick back up in June.